conditions are met, the board can grant approval for a variance from the ordinance. The four conditions that must be met are: 1, extraordinary or exceptional circumstances which apply to this parcel alone. 2, preservation of rights that a similar zone parcel would have. 3, no detriment to adjacent properties. 4, the request is not such a general nature that the ordinance should be changed. And like a decision by the Planning Commission that must be approved or can be overturned by the City Commission, the decision by the Zoning Board of Appeals is final. There is no review or opportunity for overturning by the City Commission. Zoning Enabling Act at Section 606, Appendix 3, an appeal from a decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals shall be filed within 30 days after the Zoning Board of Appeals issues its decision in writing, signed by the chairperson, if there is a chairperson, or signed by the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals if there is no chairperson, or within 21 days after the Zoning Board of Appeals approves the minutes of its decision. The court may affirm, reverse, or modify the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The court may make other orders as justice requires. Okay, we got some minutes that need to be approved for May 8th, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, you don't have to make one.
You don't have that? Yeah, we're gonna, yeah, okay. May need a motion for that, for the May 8th.
Motion to approve the minutes for May 8th meeting.
Okay, motion by Roger.
Second.
Okay, right, by Tom. Any questions or additions to the minutes before I call for a vote? Hearing none. All in favor of passing the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. And do we need a motion to take the 22nd off the agenda?
Wouldn't hurt.
All right. Somebody want to make a motion to remove the minutes for May the 22nd off the agenda? We don't have those minutes available.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion by Randy.
Second.
Second by Tom. Okay. Any questions on that before I call for a vote? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It is approved. Okay, we have 561 Faircrest. The applicant hereby requests to construct a 7-foot by 16 porch within the 16-foot of the front lot line. The above is contrary to the following section of the City of Walker zoning ordinance 94-188, L16, 94-352A. Address is 561 Faircrest Avenue. Applicant's property's name is Shirley M. Snope. Property's address, applicant's name, and phone number and address are same as above. Zoning district is a single family. Use of existing premises, single family home. Use of proposed premises, single family home. Previous appeals are none. Exceptional or ordinary circumstances. Applicant's response: I have lived in my present home since I've been married, 56 years. We have always worked hard to keep our home looking nice for our neighborhood. We have done some upgrades and think a new porch/deck would make our home look prettier. Our front porch has slanted down on the right side. I have knee replacements in both knees. In order to go down out of my front door, I will have to use a railing. My boys suggested instead of just putting up a railing, why we just put in a small deck or porch. Then I could put a couple of chairs out there to sit on. My husband of 55 years passed away in June, and our 2 boys told their dad that they would take care of me. I have my grandkids over a lot and would like to have a place so that they could read to me when it's nice weather outside. They read quite a lot. Preservation of rights. Examples of my lots where encroachments may be granted. I went down my street and have noticed that some have added new porches. I have seen a couple of houses that have new white railings and look really nice. That is what I am going to do with mine. One house up the road has landscaping which is quite close to the road and looks really nice. 3, no detriment. When you look up at my house from the street, it does not look like the deck will be really big. I just had my contractor remove the old railroad ties that were rotting from many years of our landscaping. We also removed all of my bushes and flowers and plan to put in new ones. Our old railroad ties and bushes were away from our house almost as far as the new deck will be. In addition, we have letters from 600 Faircrest Northwest, 4333 Chesterfield Boulevard, 556 Faircrest are all in favor of, have not opposed to it, they're all in favor of it. They are in the packet here. 4, not a general problem. The conditions or situations, okay, well, I can read that. Applicant's response, I don't think this will be a problem granting my request. I'm sure none of my neighbors would object. I have a lot of green space on my property. There is a lot of room between my house in the corner and my neighbors to the west of me. We have about 8 foot of property in the back between my neighbors and the property. I have a small garden in my old sandbox I once had for our kids. Years ago when they built outhouses, there were only a few houses on the road. We had gravel roads, we had ditches, and no sewers or water. I'm sure the zoning ordinances have changed times over the years. I have heard of a thing called the grandfather rights, although I don't really exactly know what that means. Anything you'd like to add, Dan?
Well, I just want to add there is a subsection response in that exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. I'll just read to add to that one. I think Mrs. Snow added that as kind of a tag along to the exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. She had a section about the size and the orientation of the lot.
Yeah.
My lot is shaped like no other lot in my neighborhood. It is kind of an irregular shape at the northwest corner of Faircrest and Chesterfield Boulevard. My house is closer to the road than any other one on my street. The size of my lot is different than any others that I have 3 houses directly across the street from me. My lot looks so big that we have had many people that have asked if we own 2 lots. So that was just an extra statement on the criterion A.
Okay.
And then I'll jump into some background and context for you folks to make your decision with. And I will say this board is fresh on the heels of a really helpful training. It was helpful for me too. And it's a good reminder that any variance request is meant to be a little bit challenging. There's meant to be 4 hurdles that you have to jump that are built to be pretty difficult to jump through. But I will, that being said, there are justifications that I find in this particular case that I'd like you to hear about. So I will run through my findings on those 4 criteria and let you make your decision. What this is a request for is a 7-foot by 16-foot porch. You can see either the old framing of what was there or the beginnings of the new framing for the new porch on the site, viewing the site facing west from Faircrest Drive, and that's the aerial photo of the site above there. You can see right there that this is a long-oriented lot, a smallish corner lot, with the secondary front yard being fairly close to Faircrest Drive there. When I was looking at this request, and you can see the drawing that came in with the building permit application, our building official actually flagged this and said, hey, I know there's some leniency in your setback rules for porches, which is true, but this still looks like it's encroaching into that porch setback. So for residential properties, you have, in almost all of our zoning districts, you have a 35-foot front yard setback. For porches or decks in the front of the house, you can go to within 25. You look at something like this, and this is a pretty small landing style setup. It's kind of a gray area between what you'd call a stoop and what you'd call a porch. So I think Andrea and I tried to look into this and see where this definition lined up for what they were trying to do here. They were basically turning their old stoop into something a little bit bigger. Is it just another stoop or is it a porch? At the end of the day, it really does look like it's more of a porch, and I think that's been the intent. The applicants have been clear about that and forthright about that. So the specific term porch is something that we regulate as having to be 25 feet back from any right-of-way line in the city. So that's why this became a request to you folks with the ZBA as a variance. That being said, I will go through the 4 findings, like I said a minute ago, and we can talk about whether there's justification for all 4 of those to meet the threshold for a variance. So feel free to stop me if you have questions. Otherwise, you can ask questions at the end.
Is this going to have steps down on the end toward
It will have steps, and steps specifically are excluded from the setback definition. So that's where we have another layer of regulation that we don't have to deal with, is with steps. So if you have steps that you need because of grade, or a ramp that you need because of grade, in the case of having an accessible approach to a house, we've been hands-off with ramps and steps. Where we start to regulate is the actual porch or landing in front of the door.
So if this were a ramp, it could encroach further?
Technically, yep,
Technically,
yep.
but she still needs it to get in and out of the house, even though it's going to have steps.
There's got to be something there to get in and out of the house. I think it's the difference of having a little additional room for seating or whatever staging
You're
area.
going to swing the door open without being on the first step.
Sure, yeah. Yep, so there's always a little bit of minutia in the zoning ordinance with stuff like that, but we work through that. So the first criterion that you want to look at is the exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. I worked with the applicant to try to speak to the limits on the size of the orientation of the lot. You saw her statement on that. You can see what I've done here is point out, first of all, that this is a corner lot. So you now have 2 sides of the house that you're restricted on in terms of decks or porches in ways more than you would be on an interior lot where you only have the 1 front yard. Now you have 2. In addition to that restriction, you can see that within the A zoning district, I looked at kind of smaller platted neighborhoods, and within that sample, this is 44 corner lots within that sample, looking at Chesterfield Heights, Old Mission plat, one of the plats by Rogers Street and Alpine, and then I think it was called Leonard Garden Estates near Remembrance and Leonard. Within that sample, you're still on the small side as far as the corner lots. You're 44th out of 70, and in this particular case, you're already within 23 feet of the road right away, so you're pretty constrained even in relation to other corner lots. You have a lot area in this case of roughly 9,300 square feet. Remember, the minimum in this zoning district is 11,880 if you were to build a new house. So if you think about the zoning ordinance in terms of how you're restricted if you're building new, you can look at this example as this is what's already on the site. The lot is already the lot is already smaller than the minimum that would be required under the current standard. So you can kind of proportionalize that for the setback that you're looking at in this case, which again is down to roughly 16 feet from the right of way. Preservation of rights. This one, I had a pretty simple methodology for how I answered this one. I took a Google Street View car and drove up and down a few adjacent blocks. You can see that there are porches and decks on certain properties in the vicinity. This is just a sample within those few blocks, and I'm sure there are more in the zoning district throughout the city. Not to say that any of these are necessarily out of compliance, or perhaps if they are, perhaps they got a variance or their decks or porches were built before this rule was passed. But here's just some examples, and I'm pretty sure from this sample there are some that are within the 25-foot setback range. So these again are examples of sites where it's more than just a landing at the end of a stairwell. This is more of a porch or a deck on houses nearby. So I think that criterion is also met. No detriment. I think you're looking at a couple of things here. One is just the visual obtrusiveness of having too much stuff in the front yard. That's something we're looking out for by having limits on front yard setbacks in the zoning ordinance. But if you look at the scale of this neighborhood, I think that's one thing you can cue in on. This is not out of scale in relation to how the house relates to the street right of way. It is right of way is about 23 feet from the wall of the house, and you're talking about a 7-foot wide porch. In a compliant lot, you could have a full 35-foot setback and you could have a 10-foot porch. So I don't think the scale is too off here. I think this is a pretty reasonable scale in comparison with what you'd normally expect for a larger lot layout, and I think it would fit in the context of the neighborhood and not be visually obtrusive or a visual nuisance. The other side of that coin is whether it would be a safety issue being in the front yard. That's another thing you look out for, especially on corner lots, where you might be talking about limiting the clear vision area or the line of sight as you make a left turn. Again, you look at this image, you can see that little orange blob on the left side of the screen. That's very roughly kind of the new edge of this porch in relation to the street. The tree is farther out than that. That telephone pole is farther out than that. I don't think you have much of a visual obstruction from a traffic safety standpoint. So I've already, in my mind, checked the box on 3 out of 4 criteria. And then the fourth one, and then of course you have some letters of support from neighbors. So that's to say they're making comments about how they would not be offended by having this. It would not impair their enjoyment of their property. The last one is the not a general problem criterion. This one's a little bit tougher. This again is where if we have a problem that could be a recurring problem, something fundamentally wrong with our zoning ordinance, we should really address it by a text amendment as opposed to making an exception to this thing that could be reoccurring. There's two sides to this coin. I do think there's a need in Walker to look at corner lot restrictions, especially on previously platted smaller lots. I think we had a good discussion about this a couple weeks ago. There are things like privacy fences, pools, whatever they are. Some of them might be appropriate, some might not, to have in that second front yard. But we probably should look at corner lots and restrictions on corner lots and restrictions on smaller lots. That being said, this particular issue of porch setback might still be a reasonable rule to have in our zoning ordinance. Having a porch setback 25 feet from the right-of-way line throughout the city might still be a good rule to follow. So I think that code can still stand on its own. I've never seen another variance request related to that code. So I think this is a unique request based on the unique layout of this lot, and I think the not a general problem criterion has probably been met for this one as well, because it's something that is not going to trigger a whole new zoning ordinance amendment. So I actually have gone through this and I've checked the box on all 4 of the variance criteria, which is supposed to be hard to do, and I think each case has its own way of going about making an argument that they've done that, but I think this one's a pretty strong argument. So I think an approval could be appropriate based on the 4 criteria being found to be met. But I encourage you to take comments and to bat it around amongst yourselves before you make a decision on that.
We need to open the hearing up too, don't we?
Yes.
Okay. I need a motion to open the hearing up.
Make a motion to open the hearing.
Motion by Roger to open hearing,
I'll second it.
seconded by Randy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Those opposed, same sign. Hearing is open. Okay. Applicant wish to respond to anything at this moment?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. If you got anything you'd like to add at this time, okay?
I really want it.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay. I'm sure we'll have, if we got any questions, we'll ask you to step to the microphone, okay? All right? All right, I'll turn it over to the boards for questions and review from the applicant. Any questions for the applicant? I think we've laid out everything, basically, Dan's laid out about everything. We have pictures here. You know, it is definitely a irregular shaped lot, even for a corner lot. I mean, it's What, we got 8-foot backyard? I mean, that's pretty irregular, okay? It's got a lot of room on the sides, but front to back's not a whole lot, so I'm thinking that's pretty unique. So, my personal opinion of it. Anything anybody else would like to add on the conditions?
No, just for discussion, Dan, is there a difference between, like an open porch and a covered porch? In our ordinance, and do we need to address that if this ever becomes covered, or if we approve this, let's say, because she might sell it in 5, 10 years, 20 years from now.
Yep.
And then if someone encloses it and does some stuff, is there some, and it's not about this situation so much as our future stuff, because this isn't gonna bother me if it was enclosed, but it's just a question that I think there's an open, is there an open thing where you put a roof over it, or?
Yeah, that's a good question, and
35, isn't it?
in reviewing this case, we stumbled on a code section that responds to it kind of in a weird way. This request is spelled out pretty clearly, and unenclosed porches are spelled out pretty clearly. And what I mean by unenclosed porches can include a porch with an awning with posts that does not have a wall around it. But at the point where you put a wall around the porch, that's when it becomes an enclosed porch. To enclose a previously approved unenclosed porch is actually a special use. So that's something that the planning commission, it would kick over to the planning commission, they would review it to see if it's compatible with the character of the neighborhood. It would not be a variance request, but it would get reviewed by the planning commission.
As long as we're on that subject, what constitutes enclosure? Spoke railings, gotta be solid, X many feet high, I mean, what are we talking?
3 walls.
3 walls, no matter what the height is, right? Or what its materials, in other words, if you got see-through spokes. that'd be-
floor to
ceiling.
Huh?
Yeah, floor to ceiling.
Oh, floor to
That's how I would
ceiling,
interpret
okay,
it.
okay, all right.
Even if it's just screen?
I
Yeah.
don't know.
These are good questions,
Yeah.
but all we have in our code to go off of is enclosed or unenclosed. So if it does ever come up, maybe the zoning administrator at that time, if it's not me, or maybe it's me, will
Yeah.
finally make a determination on it, and if I can't figure it out with the applicant, we'll bring it to you folks for a
Okay.
determination of what unenclosed or enclosed means, and in the meantime, we might have a definition for it.
Okay,
So in any future case, any future owner that wanted to enclose this would have to present it back anyway.
Present it to the planning commission,
To the planning
yeah,
commission.
as a special use.
well, you'd have to have building permit, right, which would trigger it, so.
Yep.
So my comment would be, so let's say Mrs. Snow gets this approved, and next year she wants to be out there in the morning, and, or earlier in the day, maybe not in the morning, but she wants to put a roof over it. She can do that.
Yeah.
However, if the following year she goes, man, I'd really like to just enclose this, I can be out there earlier in the spring and longer in the fall, I want to put 3 walls up. She can't do that.
She has to go to the planning
Or
commission.
she'd have to go to the planning,
She has to just present a facade drawing to the planning commission.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to, I just kind of, for future
Yeah.
use, figure that
Yep.
out.
It would ruin her view through those nice windows.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly,
But we can put a roof over it, and we just can't enclose it.
right.
That's my rate of
And
the
she would need a
ordinance.
permit to put a roof over it, because it's not in the plans at this point, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Or the next owner of the property could do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And is that right? There's no plan for a roof at this time, correct?
No.
Okay.
No. No roof, no awning, no nothing.
Okay.
Okay.
Will there be railings? Is there gonna be a railing? And it's gonna be what material? I'm just curious.
Vinyl.
Vinyl, the white to match the trim, or beautiful, okay. Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Are the stairs going to go off the front or the side? Just
Front.
curious. The stairs off the deck? Are they
Step.
gonna, steps off the deck, off the front?
2 steps.
Okay. Any more questions? If not, I'll ask for a motion to close the hearing.
I can make a motion to close the
All
hearing.
right, Randy makes the motion to close the hearing.
Support.
Supported? Okay. All in favor of closing the hearing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. The hearing is closed. All right, now we'll just send it over to the board for review of the application. Ask for the motion.
Any public comment? Forgot to ask that.
I don't know, anybody here wants to comment on this? Okay. Name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Mike Hood, 600 Faircrest, right across the street from her. I just want to make this, I talked to Dan, really great guy to work with this kind of stuff. But what's the approval length for her to continue construction?
To where? What, I didn't
The
get
length
it.
of time, this has to be approved so
Yeah.
she can continue
Oh,
with
start on it, you
construction.
mean? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Usually takes, what is it, how many days is it from the,
I'm glad you asked. There is
Right.
a mechanism to waive that, and
Yeah.
you can look at that. I just want to reference the specific section, but there's a request you can make to waive. There's a mandatory 5-day waiting
yeah,
period.
5-day
otherwise-
waiting
Okay,
period?
5 days is fine, but I don't want her to wait until the middle of July. You know, I
No.
mean, she's got to get this done. She has only one way out of her house right now.
I understand. 5 days is what it would be.
Yep, that'll be
Okay.
And we
fine.
can waive that if
You know, if that's, you need it quicker than that, we can ask, you can ask for a waiver
I think
of
this
it.
guy's ready to go. So there's that situation.
Well, is it, you need it sooner than the 5 days, I guess, what we need.
Well, it'll get her through the weekend, right? Unless
Yeah.
you're talking business days.
I think the permit hasn't been issued, so that 5 days is gonna be close.
Okay, okay.
all right.
As long as it gets done.
Okay.
And I've talked to Shirley plenty of times about this, and she's adamant that she's going to plant stuff around this porch, so it's not going to be a eyesore for the rest of the neighborhood.
Right.
And from what I've known her for the last 20 years, she's really true to her word, so I'm not worried about that too much. I want to address another issue, if I may.
Sure.
I understand that Walker's in a kind of a transitionary state, okay? And the regulations and all that other kind of stuff change constantly. But it appears to me, from my experience, is that Walker appears to be more concerned with policies, requirements and regulations than they are with personal safety. And this could have been nipped in the bud, all right? And you know, I don't know how many of you people are Catholic, but it's always been easier for me to ask forgiveness rather than permission. So there are special cases, and I think we need to have something in the regulations that address special regulations or special conditions, and she certainly qualifies.
That's why she's here, sir.
I know.
That's the avenue we got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you know, the only way in or out of her house right now is through her kitchen, and guess where most of the fires in the house start?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, that's the kind of sort of thing that might have to be addressed with all this. And, you know, for future modifications to dwellings, you know, and in this case, I had the same problem she had, that my porch was sloping, and it was actually ripping my foyer out. So I had to get rid of the whole darn thing. And, but there's just a lot of stuff in that area. I mean, that house was built 57 years ago. And, you know, I don't know what the rules and regulations were at the time. However, I actually watched her house being built. And, but, you
How old
know,
were you, like 6 or 7 or what?
huh?
No. How old were you at that point, 6 or 7 or?
Yeah, probably something like that.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I'm going to
No,
be
that's fine.
67 in a month, so, you know,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
probably,
Yeah.
you know, 60 years ago.
Okay.
But, you know, you know, a lot of sleight of hand going on, I think, because, you know, that whole area was developed in kind of a hurry after 1955. And so my contention here is, not to belabor the point or anything like that, but we need to look at the older structures because, you know, they're deteriorating really fast. And a lot of us are keeping them up and we're struggling to keep them up. But there are a lot of houses out there that are, you know, got them slopey porches, you know, so you're probably going to have this issue more than this. And I could read you chapter and verse on what I think about the whole thing, but the other deal is, you gave me a picture of, you know, where those little black lines are, where the sidewalks and stuff are going to go. When are we going to know about this? After the fact or during construction? Are we going to have neighborhood hearings on these or what? I've talked to a lot of my neighbors in the last week, having seen that picture, and there are not a lot of them that want to see sidewalks. And that's part of the issue with her porch, is that there may be some connectivity issues with a porch, with a sidewalk. I physically went over and measured the distance between the edge of her porch, proposed porch, and the street, and it's 33 and a half feet, you know, and you've got it restricted to 16 feet, and the steps don't matter, right?
You can put steps up to the.
Yeah, but they don't count for that footage. Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, I don't want to be a creep about it, but you know, there has to be some movement there. And when my grandparents built the house that I'm living in, and when she built her house, I don't know if you did or not, but that road was gravel with ditches, you know, and there's a whole lot more. I don't want to say residential encroachment, you know, regarding the street or anything like that, but it sure puts a big restriction on people that live in that area. So just consider this, all right? Where you're going to put these sidewalks, the parkways may have to be a little smaller than you think, but that's just me. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, sir.
Are you gonna have to put sidewalks in there?
You want me to take a shot in the dark on this?
Sure.
I don't think there are any immediate plans for a sidewalk in that stretch. I thought I was responding to a question about where the standard location for a sidewalk would be. So I don't know if or when there will be sidewalks on that stretch.
I know a few years ago, we had some, on the other side, to the west, we had some grants, okay?
Yeah, there's
connect-
CDBG
yeah.
grant money available.
Connect the sidewalks. I don't know of anything on this side yet. unless you do.
Yeah, I don't either, but our engineering department is the main contact for that. I can speak to where the typical sidewalk location is, but I don't know about the timing of any sidewalk project
Right.
right now.
Okay, anybody have any more questions before we go through the review for the motion? Anybody care to go through it? We went through basically everything there is with Dan, so anybody care to articulate one?
Just make a motion? Is that what you're asking for?
I'm thinking we're to that area right now, so we're pretty close to the hearing on it, so.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
So I guess I can make a motion that we approve this variance based on the applicant's responses to the four criteria.
Okay.
I don't think, we don't need any conditions, I didn't hear any from him.
I didn't recommend any conditions. If you
Right.
folks want to add any, if you wanted to consider the exemption from 5-day requirement,
Yeah,
that's up to the
Well,
applicant.
the applicant would have to ask for it
Yeah.
formally if that's what they want to waive. Otherwise, we'll just wait for 5 days. That's strictly up to you.
but there's no permit yet, so they're gonna have to go
Right,
through that
you gotta go for
process.
that anyway, so it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, so.
I guess I would just make the motion that we approve it based on the application.
Okay, that for the grounds that basically,
For the reasons.
for the reasons, grounds, and the facts finding that basically Dan went through, I think those are pretty sufficient, okay? We have a motion and a support, okay? Any comments on the motion, additions, deletions, or anything before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. It is approved. I need a signature here, Roger, right here. Right here, huh? Kind of plaid shirt right here.
Yes, yeah.
I'll bring it down.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
So Dan, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Off the record, are we on the record? What brought this to us? Just,
Building official saw that. Thank you,
Building
Mrs.
permit.
okay.
Be in touch.
Request, I guess.
Building official saw the setback deficiency and he brought it to me. And then, like I said, I researched to see where this structure lined up in our definitions, whether it was a stoop or a porch.
Okay.
Really couldn't call it a stoop,
Got it.
so it became a porch that needs a setback variance.
All right, thank you. I was just curious.
And I do agree, the safety issue is a big one. So I talked to Mrs. Snope about whether she has access out of the house, even though garage access is not ideal by any means, but we would have tried to accommodate a
Temporary.
temporary landing type thing if we needed to, but it sounded like they were
Okay.
willing to wait.
Okay,
That's a really important point, though.
good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for your patience and your thoroughness with Ms. Stoops, and I apologize to her and to Mr. Power about, I should have tried to get a permit first before signing on with her for this, and then she wouldn't have been stuck out like this, and so I apologize for that. If I'd did try to permit and find out what you guys felt about this, but with me, this won't happen again. We'll always come and see what the requirements are before making promises to people.
Thank you
Good plan.
much.
Yep, good plan.
Yep.
Yep, and the requirements aren't always intuitive.
Yeah,
So
right,
that's a good practice and a good lesson, so appreciate that.
Anything we need to know?
Your next meeting may be June 26th. We'll
Okay.
keep you posted. Most likely will be. There's one application that seems pretty on track.
Okay.
Otherwise, anybody in this room is invited to a meeting hosted by the Planning Commission on June 19th. It'll start at 5 o'clock. It's at English Hills Golf Course, especially for those of you interested in the Alpine area. We're focusing on neighborhoods within Walker. There's 4 neighborhood clusters that we're looking at through our master plan. And this first one that we're going to tackle in a public meeting facilitated by our master plan consultant is going to be the Alpine area. So we'll have a meeting at 5 o'clock on June 19th. Spread the word, invite your Alpine area friends and family members, and maybe see you there. There you go.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right. Now, hearing no more
Back to
business.
work.
I'll
Next
second.
motion
I'll second.
adjourned. Signify
I'll second.
Randy. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All same sign, we are adjourned.